Hello, this is the Lord's Legion and welcome to yet another tier list, this time in relation being the Ultimate Marvel Villains tier list. Now, unlike the previous tier list in which I was focusing on the MCU villains, as you can see from the villains in display, this time I am going to be focusing on the more comic book villains. And because of the wide variety of villains in Marvel Comics throughout the years, I've decided to bring out 60 of the most prominent or most recognizable villains, and no doubt this is going to be a pretty controversial list in some way, shape or form. But without further ado, let's just jump right into this because this is going to be a really long video. But before we do so, if you do want to share me your own personal tier list by using my format, then feel free to go in the pinned comment down below, or you can click on the link in the card in which will take you straight into my tier list. So by now I think everyone knows the score when it comes down to tier lists and the certain tier criteria. Like, first and foremost, we do have the Circus of Crime over there, the very bottom, the lowest common denominator, meaning you're shit. And then over here you've got the Wrecking Crew, which is the second shittest, in other words you can do some chaotic shit, but you probably don't have much to your name outside of some destructive credibility. And then above that we have the Brotherhood, in other words meaning that you can do plenty of good shit and you are fairly credible and you've done a few things. And then above that we have the Masters of Evil, who let's just say are the type of villains who have done something immense within the Marvel Universe, if not are prominent members within the Marvel Universe. And above all that, the final tier, we have the one above all. But only one villain is allowed to be on the one above all, and that will be the million-dollar question. Out of all of the 60 characters, out of all of the 60 villains within the Marvel Universe, who is the one above all? And if you've been on my channel for quite some time, you would probably already guess who is the one above all. But without further ado, just for shits and giggles, let's just jump straight in to the tier list. First and foremost, we do have Ronan the Accuser right here, and if you ask me, I think Ronan is a very solid villain. Not quite as prominent as you would imagine, but I think he is still solid regardless, and he is pretty important. So, while he hasn't done that much to his name, I think by being a Kree representative, he is worthy enough of being among the Brotherhood criteria. Next, we do have Madame Mask, and I feel like she's been very slept under the rug, in the sense that I feel like there's plenty of potential in this character, but Marvel had never quite tapped into her full potential as of yet. But given now she is one of the more recognizable Iron Man villains and how she was a former love interest of Tony Stark, I feel like, again, she's worthy of being in the Brotherhood in my eyes. I feel like she could be in the Masters of Evil if she was actually pushed even further. And I feel like with a lot of these villains on the tier list, I feel like they would fall in under the Brotherhood, given that they have yet to really fully experiment with their maximum potential. Up next, we do have Jean Grey, or more accurately, the Dark Phoenix. And I feel like, come on, Masters of Evil, like, she has caused so much damage within the Marvel Universe, and the cosmic entity that is the Phoenix Force is, like, one of the most powerful beings in the universe. So, of course, it would be a huge disservice if she wouldn't be in the Masters of Evil. Some may say the one above all, but this isn't purely about power here. This is about my personal preference, how interesting they are as a character, and just, you know, just pretty much everything here and in between. But, you know, if we were basing this purely on power, she probably would be the one above all, like, even overpowering Galactus. But again, I'm just rambling here. Next, we do have Eric Killmonger, and if we were speaking of his MCU counterpart, he would probably be in the Masters of Evil. But unfortunately, he's only really had one credible storyline to his name, which didn't really do a whole much about this character, and he really didn't do a whole lot after that point. So I feel like he will have to fall under the Wrecking Crew, a fairly credible villain, but ultimately he hasn't done much during his career as a villain. Up next, we do have Amora, aka the Enchantress, and she is such a wonderful character, and she is very heavily slept under, kind of like Madame Mask. But unlike Madame Mask, however, I do feel like she has done a lot more within the Marvel Universe and how she has actually been important with certain stories, such as the Thor mythos as well as Secret Wars. So I do feel like she is worthy of being among the Masters of Evil, and it does make sense for Amora to be in the Masters of Evil because she is among the founder members of the Masters of Evil. And speaking of magic users, we do have Dormammu. Again, he is a huge character within the Marvel Universe, among one of the most powerful within the Marvel Universe, and for that reason, he also deserves to be in the Masters of Evil. Almost put him in the one above all. Again, he does have the potential in terms of power, but once again, we are talking about how credible he is as a villain, as well as how interesting he is. Nevertheless, I can't deny that Dormammu is a very kick-ass villain, and I always enjoy seeing him used to his maximum potential, and he has done quite a lot within the Marvel Universe. Up next, we do have Sandman, and he hasn't really done a whole lot, honestly, and given the fact that he has been bouncing between hero and villain, he does kind of lose some points in the villain department. But honestly, aside from him being a jobber, he doesn't do anything, so that he's going to be in the Wrecking Crew. I feel like that's a pretty fair place. Not quite the circus of crime, because he isn't lame and he is very devastating when he is actually using his powers correctly. Speaking of Spider-Man villains, we do have Electro, and he is much like Sandman in the sense that he is very destructive. But given the fact that he was responsible of the outbreak in the raft, I do feel like he has more credibility than Sandman, so I feel like a very strong brotherhood would be a good spot. Maybe even above Ronan, because I feel like Electro is such an iconic villain. And on top of that, it has been stated numerous times, and has been proven plenty of times, in that Electro is very much an equal to Magneto in terms of sheer power. So for that reason alone, he is worthy of being among the Brotherhood. Up next, we do have Crossbones, who has always been seen as somewhat of a jobber, but unlike most jobbers, he did actually have the claim of quote-unquote killing Captain America. And while it would be kind of appropriate to put Crossbones in the Wrecking Crew, I do feel like it's a bit unfair because he does have one pretty important kill to his name, so for that reason, I'm going to put him in the very generous Brotherhood category. I feel like that is very fair for Crossbones. And up next, we do have Shumagorath, who, much like Dormammu, is among one of the most powerful magical entities within the Marvel Universe, so easily you would think the Masters of Evil. But what really grinds my gears about Shumagorath, as powerful as he is, he has never done anything of significance in any of the Marvel comics. So we really don't know much of what he is capable of, or even how much of a threat he is. I mean, we kind of have an idea. He is meant to be above the likes of Dormammu, Galactus, and so on, but because he is such an enigma, I feel like he is worthy of being in the Brotherhood, and while it would make more sense for him to be with the Masters of Evil, he hasn't done anything in his name that really made him among one of the greatest within the Marvel Universe, as far as villains are concerned at least. Next, we do have the Lizard, and I always feel like the Lizard is probably one of the most underutilized Spider-Man villains, because I always feel that because of his personal connections to Peter Parker, that he would be like Green Goblin levels, or even Doc Ock levels, but for some reason they just never really took that to their advantage with the Lizard. But even with that being said, I do feel like he is one of the most interesting out of the Spider-Man villains, so I feel like a very strong Brotherhood is a fair place for the Lizard. I would love to put him in the Masters of Evil, but again, he hasn't done a whole lot, nor has proven himself to be like an arch nemesis, as much as he really has every right to be. Speaking of arch enemies, we do have Baron Zemo, and come on, like, he is the founder of the Masters of Evil. So it would make sense for Baron Zemo to be in the Masters of Evil, because for one, like I said, he has founded the Masters of Evil, and on top of that, he did shake the Marvel Universe in such a huge way by bringing in the Thunderbolts. Not to mention his connections to Hydra, I feel like Baron Zemo is very worthy of being in the Masters of Evil. And then speaking of Thunderbolt members, I'm honestly not trying to link them in with one another. Honestly, it's just kind of how it's working at the moment. We do have Satana Hellstrom, a character who I really enjoy seeing whenever she's in the comics. And I'm pretty sure they might butcher her in the Hellstrom series, but I digress. She hasn't done an awful lot, but she has proven herself to be powerful, so I feel like the Brotherhood is a very fair place for her. And I'm just putting it on there because I've always loved Satana as a character, and you know, I'm a huge sucker when it comes down to the magic aspect of the Marvel Universe, or at least the magic realm. Next, we do have Taskmaster, who is going to really kick some ass in Black Widow, if it actually comes out in 2020. I've always been fond of Taskmaster. He is one of the most ruthless assassins in the Marvel Universe, and he always had a cool design for me. And so I feel like, again, Brotherhood, I feel like it's very, actually, I'll put him above Thingy. Here we go, well, that's a good placement for Taskmaster. I feel like he could actually go places if Marvel decide to push him after Black Widow. But till then, I think this is a good place for him. Up next, we do have Sabretooth, a villain who I always enjoy. He is among one of the most brutal, evil villains within the Marvel Universe. And he's a very strong tier Brotherhood. I'll put him around there. Actually, yeah. That makes sense. I feel like he does have the potential to be among the Masters of Evil, but most often than not, at least, or at least half of the time, he is seen to be a jobber, and he's working with other villains within the X-Men Rogues Gallery, if not even being a follower of sorts. But he does have the potential of being the Masters of Evil. However, a villain who is worthy of being among the Masters of Evil, we do have the Hood, a very underrated villain, but has caused so much shit during Dark Reign. Not to mention the fact that he was a crucial member with the Cabal and even scarred Doom's face recently. I feel like that alone does give him some street cred. Up next, we do have the Scorpion, who might very well be one of the main villains of Spider-Man 3, depending on where they're actually going to take Spider-Man next. Well, truthfully, I feel like Scorpion, much like the Lizard, is among one of the most underrated Spider-Man villains and has been very underutilized because, for all intents and purposes, Scorpion was the original anti-Spider-Man before we even had Venom. And while he has proven himself time and time again to be a threat, I feel like it'll be fair to put him within the Brotherhood. Well, regarding where I would put him, I might put him over here. I feel like that is fair. I think Taskmaster is more dangerous and more interesting as a villain, but Scorpion, you can't diss him really, because he has actually proven himself to be a threat over and over again. And then continue on with Mean and Green, we do have Abomination, and it does seem like he is going to add fuel to the flame with the Brotherhood, because time and time again he has proven to be among one of the most dangerous, like, Hulk villains around. And I've always had a soft spot for Emil Blonsky, and I do feel like he is a worthy nemesis. And you know, Abomination has done plenty of nasty things towards Bruce Banner over the years, so I do feel like that is a very fair place to put him. Next on the list, we do have Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, and as many of you may know, Carnage is among one of my favourite villains of all time, probably the very first villain in media that I ever fell in love with, so for that reason, he is at the top of the Masters of Evil, and on top of that, given his plenty of fucking storylines like Maximum Carnage, Absolute Carnage, Carnage USA, I do feel like he had solidified himself as one of the most, if not the most dangerous Spider-Man villains in the comics. And then continuing on with Spider-Man villains, although not really as dangerous, we do have Rhino. It's Wrecking Crew time. He is in the Wrecking Crew. You know, he is pretty powerful in terms of raw strength, but he is an idiot and hasn't really done much to really solidify himself as a proper villain. He hasn't really done much within the Marvel Universe aside from being a jobber, so for that reason, I can't put him anywhere above the Wrecking Crew. Next on the list, we do have Apocalypse. Always has been one of my favourite X-Men villains, if not my favourite X-Men villain. Maybe I never really thought of them on the list. So for that reason, he's caused so much shit, he has to be in the fucking Masters of Evil. There you go. Actually, no, I'll put him... Like, who makes more sense? Him or Dark Phoenix? Who should be above? Who should be above? Who should be above? You know what? I'm gonna put Apocalypse above because I do feel like he has been in more iconic storylines than Dark Phoenix and has actually proven himself to be a major threat every time he's in the comics. And while Dark Phoenix can be reasoned with at times, Apocalypse, more often than not, cannot be reasoned with. And let's ignore Hickman's run on the X-Men because that is just shockingly bad. Then moving on, we do have Omega Red. I'm not going to bullshit with anyone. I don't know too much about Omega Red, and he hasn't really done all that much. So I'm gonna have to put him in the Wrecking Crew. Maybe a disservice. Maybe I just don't know about him enough. But you know, not quite on the level of Circus of Crime, because that's where the real lame villains belong. Next on the list, we do have the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. And while it is easy to put him on either the One Above All, or even the Masters of Evil, I do feel like he has lost his edge, because in every other fucking event he does die. And it's kind of laughable at this point, and he has lost a lot of dread. So where does he belong now? I mean, it would be easy to put him in like the Brotherhood or something, but I can't deny the impact he has put on the Marvel Universe, so here we go, let's be generous here. Put Dark Phoenix above him. Put Dark Phoenix above him. Here we go. Thanos, you may have lost your touch, but because of the Infinity Gauntlet, and you have caused quite a lot of shit in the Marvel Universe, I can't discredit you completely, my friend. Blackheart! I absolutely love this villain. Easily a worthy candidate of being among the Masters of Evil. Unfortunately, he is rarely ever used aside from like maybe one or two stories, so he's in the Brotherhood, at the top end of Brotherhood. I would put him in the Masters of Evil, but he hasn't really proven himself just yet, which is unfortunate because Blackheart really has so much potential. Up next, we do have Mystique, easily among the Masters of Evil. She is one of the most influential characters within the X-Men mythos, even though she did start off as a D-list character. But over time she has solidified herself within the X-Men universe, or at least the X-Men side of the universe. So I feel like that is fair. Like, should I put her above Hood? Yeah, put her above Hood. I feel like she's more iconic in that sense. Up next, we do have a bit of a hot take, and that being the Hobgoblin. Probably a bit of a hot take, but I'm probably going to put him in the Circus of Crime, because honestly, I don't see the appeal of the Hobgoblin despite of a slight different alteration of appearance, and the fact that his identity was a secret for almost a decade, which was the only thing that made him remotely interesting, and after that, he really hasn't done much since. Yeah, hate me all you want, Hobgoblin fans, I just don't care for him. Next, we do have Onslaught. Realistically, I should put him in the Masters of Evil because he practically destroyed the 616 universe at one point, but that's like the only story he's ever been in and has done fuck all since. I'm just gonna put him in the Wrecking Crew, fuck you. Next, we do have Hela, the goddess of death. I do feel like is pretty overrated to some extent, and as much as I really love Hela, again, with some villains within the Brotherhood, like, she has never done much of significance, so for that reason, I have to put her in the Brotherhood. And while we're on the topic of evil magical users who sport green cloaks, we do have Doctor Doom, and come on, I'm not even going to beat around the bush. If you know me, Doctor Doom is like my favourite villain of all time, and not to mention that when it comes down to Marvel villains, Doom is the face of villainy, so how can I put him any less? Next, we do have Dr. Octopus. Again, he is very iconic, very interesting. I have to put him there. Actually, Yeah, I'll put him there for now. I'll probably reshuffle once I'm completely done, but as of right now, I feel like this is a worthy spot for Dr. Octopus. You know, I always liked him as a character. He is pretty integral to the Spider-Man mythos, so as far as I'm concerned, he is among one of the big bads. Moving on, we do have Lady Deathstrike. Again, much like with Omega Red, I don't know a whole lot about Lady Deathstrike, nor what she's really capable of, nor like any impact she has within the Marvel Universe, if she really had any, so Wrecking Crew. She's probably dangerous, and I no doubt about that, but I don't think she's really done much of significance to really put her among even the Brotherhood category. Although the same cannot be said about Selene, however, who, while being pretty underrated, she has actually made a mark within the X-Men mythos. Like, she has proven herself to be one of the most dangerous villainesses in the Marvel Universe, so, again, Masters of Evil, it's where Selene belongs, baby. It's where she belongs. Speaking of very sinister characters within the X-Men mythos, Mr. Sinister, again, very worthy indeed, very worthy of being among the Masters of Evil. Like, he may be underrated to some, but when you really look into this character and the shit he's caused, he has to be up there, surely. Up next, we do have Galactus. Like, come on. It's Galactus. Moving on from Galactus, we do have another G in the form of the Green Goblin, or GG Green Goblin. Again, Masters of Evil. Come on. Hell yeah, he has done so much within the Marvel Universe, has made Spider-Man's life a complete hell, had Jack Gwen Stacy, I mean, let's ignore that, but, I mean, that is pretty dastardly if you ask me. Up next, we do have the Vulture. I've never been fond of the Vulture. I have to put him in the Circus of Crime. I get that he is the very first Spider-Man super villain, but he has never quite evolved as a character, and if not for Homecoming, he'd probably be my least favourite Spider-Man villain. Well, saying that about Kraven, fuck Kraven. I think Kraven is one of the worst Spider-Man villains, period. Like, aside from Kraven's Last Hunt, which is very overrated, it's not even a good story, really. Like, I don't see his deal, like, what is even Kraven's deal, aside from hunting, because, yeah, fuck Kraven. So someone who I don't want to fuck around with is Loki, because he is the god of fuckery, and while, to an extent, I feel like he has lost his edge, like Thanos, at the same time, I do feel like he has done plenty enough, and I feel like he hasn't been quite overused in the comics. I mean, I know he's been somewhat turned into an anti-hero, but at the very least, when you compare him to Thanos, like, Thanos has been killed off every other event since Secret Wars 2015, and at least with Loki, you know, he's got plenty of tricks up his sleeve, so for that reason, I have to put him above Thanos. It's just how it is. Next, we do have the Mandarin. I mean, all you Mandarin purists out there are gonna hate me, but fuck the Mandarin. He's a piece of shit villain. He is the worst arch nemesis I can think of. There's not a single thing that makes him a worthy arch nemesis for Iron Man. That's the final nail in the coffin for you Mandarin lovers. Iron Man 3 was the best thing that has ever happened to the Mandarin. And not only that, that was the Mandarin at his most relevant. Although saying that, people are probably going to say, oh, look at Shang-Chi, they're actually going to redeem the Mandarin, but I don't really give a shit. Now we get to Magneto, and it would be a huge disservice to put him in the Brotherhood, even though he is the founder of the Brotherhood, but the Masters of Evil, that's where Magneto belongs. He is one of the most interesting Marvel villains, he is one of the most important Marvel villains, he is one of the most powerful Marvel villains, and above all else, he's just one of the best Marvel characters in general. And holy shit, I do have 3 of the biggest players together. Again, I'll probably reshuffle this and like kind of fix this once I've got everyone in their supposed ranks. For now, let's just ignore the kind of inconsistencies here. Up next, we do have Mephisto, and yeah, I have to put him in the Masters of Evil. Like, he is very integral, very destructive, very cunning. If not for Mephisto, we wouldn't have Doom in some regards, so for that reason, we owe a lot to Mephisto. Like, he has really shook the Marvel Universe, unlike most other villains on this list. Next, we do have Sator, or Sortor. I know people say Sator, but I always say Sortor because it just sounds more badass. To me, Sortor has always been such a badass villain, and I feel like with his destructive nature, he is worthy of being with the Masters of Evil. Like, he has actually caused the Ragnarok, and he is up there with Odin as being one of the most powerful across the 9 realms. So I feel like, yeah, that's a worthy place to put him. Next, we do have MODOK again. Not a huge fan of MODOK, but in saying that, MODOK, you know, he has proven himself to be somewhat of a threat, so I'll put him in the Wrecking Crew. It'd be easy to put him in the Circus of Crime, but I don't want to discriminate him based on his silly appearance. You know, that's been kind of done to death at this point, so I think it's fair to put him in the Wrecking Crew, because at the very least he does have aim on his side. Next, we have Morgan Le Fay, who most people will probably underestimate because she hasn't been in that many stories, but when you really look into her history as well as what she has contributed within the Marvel Universe, she is a one important bitch. And because she is such an important figure within the mystical realm of the Marvel Universe, she has to be in the Masters of Evil. And again, we owe a lot to Morgan Le Fay for Doom's existence and him being the sorcerer. Like, without Morgan Le Fay, he wouldn't be nearly as powerful in terms of being the sorcerer. And on top of that, because I'm such a huge Doctor Doom shill, I especially love Doctor Doom related characters like Morgan Le Fay, so I'm always going to have them in such high regard in it. And speaking of Doctor Doom related characters, Kang the Conqueror again. Such a huge, important character, well, because he has proven himself time and time again as being the Master of Time, he deserves to be high on this list. Where about? I'll put him in between the Avenger villains. No, I'm gonna put him here, because I feel like Kang does have a lot of potential. Even though he is very complicated as far as origins are concerned and how his powers kind of work. Next, we do have Viper, a very cool Captain America villain. A very cool Hydra leader. I don't think she has done an awful lot, so for that reason, I mean, she does gain points for being Hydra leader, but as far as I'm concerned, I'll put her in the Brotherhood. Moving on from here, we do have Mysterio, who has never really done all that much, but, you know, he is iconic nonetheless. So I feel like, while it would make more sense to put him in the Wrecking Crew, I'm just gonna be a little biased here and put him in the Brotherhood. And when you put into consideration what he can do in Old Man Logan, even though that is from an alternate universe, you know, his powers have the potential to do some really fucked up shit. Next, we have the Red Skull. Easily one of the most evil villains in the Marvel Universe. I've recently covered him within the best villains ever, and automatically he is among one of the best villains ever. And where would I put him? Where would I want to put him? I'll put him here. Yeah, that's a fair one. I feel like that is the right place to put Red Skull. Next, we do have one of the more recent villains, and that being Ultimate Reed Richards, aka The Maker. Now, a lot of people may be surprised considering that I'm a huge fan of the Fantastic Four, but I've never liked Mr. Fantastic as a character. I think he is a piece of shit. But Ultimate Reed is probably the only version of Mr. Fantastic I like, because at least there's a reason behind his insanity, and I feel like, as a villain, he has shook up the Ultimate Universe unlike any other. And for that reason alone, he is worthy of being in the Masters of Evil. The only downside to him is that he hasn't done much within the 616, or ever since he jumped into the 616, aside from his inclusion in the current Venom run. But in saying that, I'm going to be biased, and I'm actually going to put him a little ahead, about... I'm going to put him here. You know, I feel like that is a safe place to put Ultimate Reed, because, again, he has done so much within the Ultimate Universe, he's shook it up unlike anyone else, and yeah, I feel like he does have a pretty bright future within Marvel Comics as far as I'm concerned. Next, we do have the leader, who I've never gave a shit about, honestly, at least not until the recent Immortal Hulk run, where they've kind of solidified him as being the main Hulk villain. So for that reason, I'm going to be generous, I'm going to put him in the Brotherhood. I'll put him at the bottom end of the Brotherhood. Like, depending on what he's actually going to do in the Immortal Hulk, he could very well be in the Masters of Evil. But until then, I'm going to be generous and be realistic and put the leader here. Up next, we have Ultron. Easy. Very easy. He is with the Masters of Evil. Like, as far as villains are concerned, Ultron is very evil. He has caused so much shit. He is probably one of the most frightening villains as well, which gives him a huge plus. And on top of that, he's just practically immortal. You can never get rid of Ultron. Speaking of mechanical madmen, we do have the Sentinels. Now, they kind of go back and forth as far as their power levels are concerned. Like, it's pretty inconsistent depending on the models. So, for their inconsistency, they're kind of jobbers really anyway, so I'll put them there. You know, the Sentinels, you know, they do the job. Like, depending on certain Sentinels, like, say, Omega Sentinel, for instance, you'd probably put her in the Brotherhood, but I don't have Omega Sentinel on there because I didn't want to put too many villains, and I feel like 60 villains are more than enough to include here. Up next, we do have Silver Sable. Realistically, she should be in the Brotherhood because while she is quite integral to the Marvel Universe, she hasn't done much dangerous shit, and on top of that, she is an anti-hero. But since I am a huge biased motherfucker and I love her connections to Doctor Doom and Latveria and Symkaria, I'm gonna be biased here. I've put her unreasonably high. I put her among the Masters of Evil. You know, I'll put Magneto up there because they have plenty of parallels. I feel like that's a fair place. Yeah, I feel like Silver Sable is such a very interesting character, and I felt guilty not having her in, so that's why I put it on this list to begin with. And speaking of Silver, holy shit, these segments. We do have Silver Samurai, who I think it's fair to put him in the Brotherhood because, you know, he has been quite important to Wolverine's life as far as I'm concerned. And I do feel like while he hasn't done an awful lot since then, I do feel like his impact is certainly there. Moving on from there, we do have Sin, who, unlike the Red Skull, she hasn't really proven herself to be that dangerous on the whole. So I'm going to put her in the Wrecking Crew. Not quite lame, but she hasn't really solidified herself as being a proper villain outside of maybe Fear itself, but even then she was augmented by the Hammers of Fear. So, yeah, sorry Sin, I love you, you've got a sexy design, but yeah, that's as far as I'm willing to go with you. Next we have Bullseye, who I do feel like is probably one of the best assassins you can think of as far as Marvel films are concerned. And he has messed up Matt Murdock in such a massive degree, and while not as influential as, say, the Kingpin, I do feel like he deserves to be in the high end of the Brotherhood. I feel like that's just appropriate to me. Then as we continue into the more street level characters, we do have the Black Cat. I know a lot of people really love the Black Cat because of her sex appeal, and well, yeah, she is an interesting character, and, you know, she is a villain from time to time. I feel like she hasn't done that much, so I'm probably going to put her here. I think that's kind of fair for the Black Cat. The most evil she's ever been was when she was the Queen Pin of Crime, but even then, it kind of dragged and she didn't do that much with that position. But, you know, I feel like that's kind of fair. Then we move on to yet another Spidey villain who's always sporting black, of course being Venom. Kind of for the similar reasons for Thanos, I feel like Venom lost his edge because he's been a hero more often than not. So I do feel like he has lost down a peg, but I can't take away his factor here, so I'm gonna put him right there, next to Thanos. I feel like, yeah, that's a fair place to put Venom. You know, he's done so much to Spider-Man over the years, I just can't knock him down. Next up, we do have the Kingpin, and you know, he is such a massive, no pun intended, villain for Daredevil and Spider-Man, so he has to be in the Masters of Evil, surely. I would put him about here. Yeah, I think that's fair. And last, but certainly not least, we do have the Juggernaut, bitch, and I'll put him in the Brotherhood. Very high Brotherhood. I always enjoyed him as a character. I feel like he's very interesting, even though some may think he's one note, but really there's a lot more to his character than meets the eye. And, you know, given the fact that he is among one of the most physically powerful Marvel villains, you know, it is no small feat. And yeah, this is pretty much the entirety of my Marvel villains tier list. And as you could probably tell from the audio quality, I'm doing this during post because for some reason editing has been a huge nightmare for this video. But even though I had about 60 Marvel villains to choose from, I feel like I have done a pretty solid job and justified my reasoning behind each ranking. And like I said at the beginning, if you do want to share your own personal tier list, then you can use my format by either going down on the pinned comment or just clicking on the card for the link. But regardless, what do you personally think of my tier list for the Marvel films? Do you think that it is a fairly accurate representation, or do you think you can do a better job than me? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.